I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, and this is Currents.
Meet a group that wants to help Haiti help itself.
It's now or never the time to talk about growth. Growth will give us the means to do for ourselves the thing that we need to do.
Is your parish website guilty? We'll hear about some major no-nos for churches in cyberspace.
And debate over a mosque near Ground Zero shows no signs of slowing down.
Obviously, we're extremely sensitive to the 9/11 issue, but this is America.
Well, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us. More than 6 months after the devastating earthquake, Haiti is still reeling. The United Nations estimates the economic toll on the island nation to be $7.8 billion. And as if that weren't difficult enough, relief funds have been slow to arrive. Former President Bill Clinton expressed frustration about countries that promise donations but have yet to honor those promises.
But there are some who say a different approach is needed, one that relies less on assistance from other countries and more on empowering Haitians themselves. This past Sunday at Brooklyn College, some economists shared their ideas on ways to have a more permanent impact on Haiti's stability.
Haiti is in a very urgent crisis. The community itself is in crisis because if we think only the Haitians in Haiti were traumatized by the January 12th, we're completely mistaken.
Make it such that it is a business. We put it in a business.
They're listening to 3 economists, people who are not only that they have degrees in the field that they're talking about, but also they have the experience.
That earthquake didn't create our problem. The earthquake exposed the problem, to the world. It exposed our weak government. It exposed our basically centralized system. The rest of the country couldn't come to the aid of Port-au-Prince. Everything was centralized in Port-au-Prince. It's now or never the time to talk about growth. Growth will give us the means to do for ourselves the thing that we need to do.
All this upswelling of support that we see in the U.S. for Haiti, which has been tremendous, people still are not digging deeper to understand, well, why was Haiti so poor in the first place? Why did a natural disaster create such a humanitarian disaster in Haiti?
From a culture of dependence.
What Haiti really needs is not aid, it's investment. And they have to create a culture in Haiti, a framework in Haiti that invites investment to come to Haiti. Otherwise, we're going to spend the rest of our life being dependent on foreign aid, and this is not good.
I'm all for collaboration with other countries. Technically, help us in getting our infrastructure established. But I'm against the climate of dependency, on financial aid. So I think once we have reforms, then aid automatically will take a whole different aspect.
You have to change the mindset. And once you change your mindset, you have a new set of what I call the change agents, the dynamic change agents that come out of that new mindset. The average Haitian in New York basically can begin by putting pressure, exert pressure on the leadership of Haiti and also on the leadership here.
We have some educators who are here, some teachers. We have different leaders of the community. Perhaps, we're saying, in 6 months, nothing has changed. Well, what are some of those reasons why nothing has changed?
Some of the people that I've invited are people who are also somewhat connected to some politicians, either as advisors or friends. My hope is that one day, when people talk about Haiti, they will stop talking about it as one of the poorest nations in the world. So basically, I want to start a conversation. I want the conversation to expand. So we know, as Haitians, we know what needs to be done for our country in order to achieve growth. And then once we know it, we can demand it from those that are in charge of the country.
And we have much more about Haiti over on our website. Just go to currentsny.net.
Stay tuned. There's more Currents straight ahead. When we come back, we'll have the day's headlines, including Elena Kagan moving closer to taking her place on the Supreme Court.
Welcome back to Currents. I'm Matt McClure.
And I'm Francesca Maxime. Coming up later, good vocabulary or not, debate on a mosque near Ground Zero is far from over.
But first, let's have a look at the day's headlines. 2.1 million out-of-work Americans have reason to breathe easier as the Senate voted today to extend unemployment benefits through the end of November. Senators voted 60-40 to approve the extension. Democrat Clark Goodwin, Robert Byrd's temporary replacement in the Senate, provided the key vote to overcome a Republican filibuster. The House is expected to take up the measure tomorrow and send it to President Obama's desk. Now, the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops also weighed in, sending out an email alert urging people to support that bill. Elsewhere in the Capitol, as widely expected, Elena Kagan has passed her first hurdle on the road to the Supreme Court. The Senate Judiciary Committee voted 13-6 to send her nomination to the full Senate. Her appointment would change the religious makeup of the High Court. As it currently stands, there are 6 Catholic justices and 2 Jewish justices sitting on the Supreme Court. Elena Kagan would be the 3rd Jewish justice. In other High Court news, the Alliance Defense Fund sent a letter to Supreme Court officials on behalf of an Arizona-based prayer group that was prohibited from praying outside the High Court's building. According to the ADF's letter, a police officer told the group that praying on the grounds of the Supreme Court was illegal. Court officials say they will investigate. Well, last week we told you about a new law in Louisiana that allows people to take concealed handguns to church, but at least one church is saying no to the measure. Louisiana Conference of Catholic Bishops letting pastors know that carrying concealed handguns should not be permitted in Catholic churches. The bill's sponsor, Representative Henry Burns, says he has no problem with the Catholic Church opting out.
Across the Atlantic, the British government has removed from its website a petition protesting Pope Benedict's September trip to the UK. The petition, sponsored by the coalition group Protest the Pope, urged Prime Minister Gordon Brown to separate the government from the Pope's intolerant views and not support the trip financially. Petitions have been a tradition in British government. The coalition is still planning to march and rally in London on September 18th to coincide with the Pope's prayer vigil in Hyde Park. From Spain, a new report shows that more than 1,300 teenagers are studying in minor seminaries, pursuing the call to the priesthood. Spain has 53 diocesan minor seminaries, and according to one bishop, more than 60% of the country's clergy are alumni. And while those teens in Spain are hard at work, a new study shows some teens are spending more time hard at play. We get more now from Rome Reports.
According to the Foundation Interactive Generations, children and teenagers between ages 10 and 18 spend 30 hours per week on video games, internet, television, cell phones, and MP3 devices.
There were people who were surprised that it was so long and would say, "This is impossible. It could not have been that long." What happens is that the screen is a portable screen, and they can carry it in their pocket.
Do not be fooled by these statistics. For example, although the use of video games is at 3 hours per week, it is not spread out among the days.
Usually a child won't play a video game for several weeks, and 1 week when he gets a video game as a gift, he plays 18 hours that weekend. The average use can be 3 hours, but in practice, no.
In contrast, every time they watch less television. While the use of television in Europe is at 27 hours per week for adults, with teenagers it is only at 16 hours. They spend more of their time on the internet. Parents are not concerned with how much time they spend, but especially with the content their children receive. The main dangerous one is pornography, but it is not the only one.
For example, it has been 2 or 3 years that in England, 2 news stories, unrelated to each other, of one boy and a girl of 8 and 10 years of age who entered into an online chat room that promoted suicide. The parents found them the next day, hanged.
The world of new technology is a changing environment. It is necessary that parents understand it to teach their children to make adequate use of what this technological world offers. Maybe it's enough to play with them, join them, and also suggest alternative activities.
I like the pony ride there.
Yes, and they're running outside. That's what they need to be doing.
All kids need that. Stay tuned. There's more Currents straight ahead. Just ahead, does your church's website look like this? Help is on the way.
Welcome back. Well, all right, it's time for a little bit of a pop quiz. What are the 7 deadly sins? So if they don't really like pop to your mind, you know, if you might guess
or something?
Gluttony, yes, sloth also. And if you guess those, you'd kind of be right, but in this case, no, because today we're talking about the 7 deadly sins of parish websites. And some of those sins that are on this list might surprise you, and some of them might have you nodding your head in agreement. So were there any surprises, Francesca?
Not so much. Well, actually, sort of. There were a few that were pretty bad. Surprises and lots of practical advice. I had a chance to speak with blogger Matthew Warner last week, who writes for the National Catholic Register, actually. He follows these kinds of things and gives out web tips and social media marketing information. And he told me just how some of these offending parish websites can actually absolve themselves of, you know, these 7 deadly sins that we're talking about, these most egregious cyber sins. Matthew, thanks so much for joining us on Currents today.
Thanks for having me, Francesca.
Well, I've looked at your article in the National Catholic Register, the 7 deadly sins of the parish website. It reads actually really funny. Talk to me about what they are. List them if you would. What are those 7 deadly sins that you say, don't do it?
Sure thing. Well, the first one is to turn off the music, eliminate all those cheesy animations and flashing text, take off the visible counters, and get rid of what you might think are really cool animated menu things.
Okay.
That's the first one.
Less is more.
Yes. The second one is to get rid of the really, it might be a fine picture, but it doesn't make a very good background image. And so it also makes text hard to read a lot of times. And 3 is to get rid of any crazy colors and fonts. Sometimes we try to go overboard with the different colors and crazy fonts and all that kind of stuff. The fourth one is to remove all of the upcoming event info, inviting everyone to come to some event that happened last year. So outdated information, keep all the information up to date. The fifth one is to try to simplify the front page. Don't put everything you want everyone to see on the front page. So still a little bit less is more there, but a lot of times parishes try to put way too much on the front page and too many menu items, and people don't know where to start. Number 6 is to not have a gigantic block of text be the centerpiece of your front page. A lot of times parishes feel like they need to put their mission statement, their full mission statement, or some letter from the pastor or something like that right in the middle of the front page, and you give your readers a reading assignment as soon as they show up. And the 7th one kind of encompasses a lot of it, and is to start spending more money and time on your website than you do on donuts. And essentially that just means you need to take your website seriously.
All right, well, so out with the donuts and in with a better website for your parish. Essentially what you seem to be saying is keep it simple and try to get the most important information right up front without distracting people away from that. First of all, is that in fact your intention in what you've written? And secondly, how does that fit in with the overall philosophy of what being Catholic is even all about?
Sure. Yeah, I think you got it exactly right. It's tempting whenever you have, and a lot of parishes have, amateurs designing their websites or volunteers designing their websites, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But a lot of times when we start tinkering around with stuff, we kind of get caught up with the gimmicks, like flashing things and moving animated this and that. But in the end, it really distracts from the purpose of the website. You're not there to impress people with what you can do with HTML or anything else. You're there to get across some information usually. And when visitors come to your site, they should know who you are and what you're about in about 4 seconds is a good rule. So if you have a gigantic block of text there, that doesn't do the job. If you have unclear language and other distractions, then that makes it harder for people to use it. And if you have too much information on there, then most people are coming to your site for probably about 2 or 3 different things normally. And you need to make those kind of things a priority in terms of trying to find them and put all the other stuff on some sort of secondary navigation page.
Would you encourage people to just have a really simple site rather than have anything, tertiary on there, just a simple site with maybe their name, their address, and the hours of Mass and that kind of stuff, rather than get into all this other stuff if they couldn't afford to hire somebody from the outside right off the bat?
I think that's definitely a good rule. If you can do the simple stuff well, I think that goes a really long way. and then if you can add any other stuff, but do it right and don't let it become a distraction to what the site's really about. And you really need to stay focused on who you're serving here with the site and really what is the purpose of it. Different parishes may incorporate some other more advanced social media interaction, which is awesome. But you have to do it in an effective way. If most of your people don't know what that is, or they don't understand how to use it, or it's just all a big mess on your front page, then it's not going to help people get information, get plugged into your community, participate with what's going on, and all that stuff. And the other big thing is updated information. So many parishes update their website, a couple times a year, maybe, if even that. And so when people come to your site, your website is often not only the first impression people have of your parish, but sometimes the only impression. If they look at your website and think, this is not an active community, this is a community that, and this goes to your question about what is it, how important is it as Catholics? Well, this is often a reflection of how seriously do you take the liturgy? How active is your community? How serious do you take the sacraments? All of these different things, if that all reflects to someone as a first impression whenever they first visit your website. And I know for me, when I'm going to a new parish somewhere or traveling or visiting, a lot of times that's the first thing I look at is their website.
So if you see a progressive website, it may be a progressive parish, and at least you want to make sure that the information that is there is accurate and not too distracting. Matthew, that is all that we have time for today, but we really appreciate your time here on Currents.
Sure thing. Thanks for having me.
He was a lot of fun. He knows what he's talking about. And when you go on a bad website, just how distracting it is. Things are flashing and blinking, and it's just like you feel like you're being accosted.
Yeah. You log onto some of those sites and some of those that we saw there, and it's like, okay, 1995 called and it wants its website back, because it's like, that was in the early days of the internet, and people were like, ooh, I can put this little flashy graphic up there, and that looks so cool. It's almost like back in the 60s when they started playing around with stereo, and they did all these weird effects on people's voices, and so all the songs that came out on the radio had these weird effects and stuff. So anything from that era, leave it alone. But yeah, less is more. Let your homepage be kind of simple, so let people see what your parish is about. And just simplify it, make it look clean. That's the thing.
And you think about it too, a lot of folks that are using maybe a website for information, they could be even a bit older, and it makes it harder to read when the fonts are really small and when there's too much stuff going on. And so you want to encourage people to be able to get more out of the website.
Know your audience.
Exactly. Well, that too.
Yeah,
too.
Because you have to, and it's got to be a reflection, because as he said, it's a reflection of the parish and the ministry there itself. So.
That's right. Nice, clean, simple websites. All right, stay right where you are. We'll be right back.
When we return, inappropriate or intolerant? Should the mosque near Ground Zero be repudiated?
It should never be necessary to deny God in order to enjoy one's rights.
Welcome back to Currents. Well, we're having some fun here today, aren't we, Matt?
Oh, yes, definitely.
Repudiate. Well, if you look up that word in Webster's dictionary, you won't find it because it is not a word. But if you check out the blogosphere, there is no way to miss former Alaskan Governor Sarah Palin's latest media mishap. Palin coined this new word on Twitter and on talk shows while wading into the heated debate over the construction of a mosque near Ground Zero. And it seems she may have underestimated wink, wink, just how much attention her latest foray into the spotlight would get.
Indeed. And while the world seems to be more focused on Palin's latest contribution to the English lexicon, there is a much more serious issue at hand. It's not the first time a prominent politician has made up a word.
They underestimated.
Everybody in Washington gets all wee-weed up.
But this prominent politician not only made up a word in front of a TV camera,
they could repudiate what it is.
Former Alaska Governor and one-time vice presidential hopeful Sarah Palin tweeted it too. When talking about the proposed mosque near Ground Zero, Palin called on peaceful Muslims to, quote, please repudiate. Whether or not she meant to use the actual words repudiate or refute, in this case her intentions were clear. Palin is a staunch opponent of the Cordoba House, a proposed community center and Islamic house of worship just a couple of blocks away from the site of the September 11th terrorist attacks. Also on her Twitter page, Palin said this, Peace-seeking Muslims, please understand, Ground Zero Mosque is unnecessary provocation. It stabs hearts. Please reject in interest of healing, end quote. But supporters of the mosque, like Ibrahim Hooper with the Council on American Islamic Relations, disagree. He says it's a matter of religious freedom.
Obviously, we're extremely sensitive to the 9/11 issue, but this is America. People have the right to buy property, to build houses of worship, to pray and do these things as they see fit, despite what this cottage industry of Muslim bashers would have.
Pope Benedict has religious freedom on his mind as well. The Vatican announced this past weekend that the theme of the pontiff's major speech to the world's political leaders January 1st will be Religious Freedom, the Path to Peace. In Benedict's address to the United Nations in 2008, he said it's inconceivable that believers have to suppress their faith in order to have their rights respected in some parts of the world.
It should never be necessary to deny God in order to enjoy one's rights. The rights associated with religion are also more in need of protection if they are considered to clash with the prevailing secular ideology or with majority religious positions of an exclusive nature.
But is that what's happening regarding the Islamic Center near Ground Zero? Some supporters say yes, and that opponents want to equate all Muslims with terrorism.
Why single out one religious minority, one project, in an attempt to smear them and to block what is being actually promoted as an interfaith, intercultural center for mutual understanding? I don't know why they're against that.
There's no question the politically conservative Sarah Palin is against the mosque, but she says it's okay to be liberal with the English language. In response to the refudiate kerfuffle, Palin once again took to Twitter with this: refudiate, misunderestimate, weed up. English is a living language. Shakespeare liked to coin new words too. Got to celebrate it. So what's next for the newly nicknamed Shakes Palin? We'll have to keep watching Twitter to find out. Shakes Palin.
I like that. Well, you know, a lot of people ask me about my ethnicity, and I'm Haitian, Dominican, and Italian, and so I say I'm Latalian.
Yeah.
Latina and Italian.
There you go.
I mean,
you got. We could all make up words.
We could.
No, but you know, this is something that too. I mean, Mayor Michael Bloomberg also came out today and spoke about criticized Sarah Palin for her tweets, regardless of grammatical correctness or not. But you know, I mean, it's something that. She is a polarizing figure in American politics anyway, and you combine that polarizing figure with a polarizing issue, and you're going to get a lot of back and forth.
Yeah, I was speaking with a girlfriend of mine whose mother was lost in 9/11, and she was expressing her lack of support for the mosque near Ground Zero for her own personal reasons. And of course, she's entitled to her own opinion on that because of her experience. The whole idea, however, of Sarah Palin being that person that everybody turns the spotlight on and sort of watching what she says and does certainly intensifies the issue. And we have it locally too in Sheepshead Bay. There's another issue there there with a proposed mosque there.
Very true, right here in Brooklyn.
Yep.
Well, that's it for this edition of Currents. Now, coming up tomorrow, are people losing faith in President Obama? We'll have a spirited discussion about how he is doing.
Until then, remember, you can always catch us online at currentsny.net. You can always check us out on Twitter and Facebook as well. Until next time, I'm Francesca Maxime.
And I'm Matt McClure. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.